Glad you're with us here at the Bristol Motor Speedway. Been able to dodge the raindrops so far. It's time for final practice under cloudy skies, but again, fortunately we're able to dodge the raindrops. Race cars have just gone on to this world's fastest half-mile speedway for their final practice. Hi everybody, Steve Burns back with Larry McReynolds and Jeff Hammond. And Larry, we had a 90-minute practice, and again, we talk about it, but it's even more in the forefront how tight this field actually is.
Unbelievable. I mean, you're running around this half-mile high-bank racetrack in right about 16 seconds. You go back to that first hour-and-a-half practice. Martin Truex Jr. was the fastest at a 15:72. John Andretti was the slowest of our 47 cars at a 16:26. Now, of our 12 teams that are here of the Go-Go Homers, we know one of them's in the show, Terry Labonte, who's a past champion. So for those other 11 teams, there's only 7 spots, and you may need just that much to make this show, or that much may send you to the house when qualifying's over.
And Jeff, all the numbers indicate over 90 races here in Cup Series competition since 1961. The numbers back it up. You better start in the top 10.
Yeah, you really need to start up front. I mean, we talk about how difficult it is as far as around this racetrack passing, trying to make things work out. But plus, when you want to make passes, you need to do it on pit road. So getting a good qualifying position will also ensure you an opportunity to have a better pick as far as the pit's concerned. Because let's not forget, Bristol is still the only racetrack on the circuit right now that we got split pit road, so it's going to always be a challenge as far as that's concerned. And the guys who need to try to pick it up or continue to be the ones who need to make it in the chase, like Juan Pablo Montoya, they need to find a little more speed in the 42. But a guy that I've been kind of worried about is last year's winner, the 99 of Carl Edwards. He didn't have that first practice like I'd hoped he would, and I'm sure like he'd like to see have happen. They had work to do on the 99 car. Congratulations, this man right here, Brian Vickers, still probably flying high from signing a contract and winning a race. Couldn't be much better for this number 83 car.
I'll tell you, they're on a rampage, Larry. In addition to winning that race last weekend in Michigan, his last 6 races, he's finished out of the top 10 just once, and that was 11th.
At the road course at Watkins Glen. And, you know, he's got some good racetracks coming up. You know, we know he runs well at Atlanta Motor Speedway, where we'll be in a couple of weeks. He sat on the pole at Richmond in the spring, so good 3 racetracks for Brian Vickers and this 83 team as we get ready for the chase.
Meanwhile, Kyle Busch in that 18 car, he's led 80% of the laps here in the last 1,000 laps or 2 races. But boys, he's got to pull a rabbit out of the hat this Saturday night. He is now 70 points outside that 12th and final spot.
But if you remember, just about a week ago, he was able to cut that deficit. He was 100 and some points behind. He cut it in half in one race. And again, Steve, he comes in here at Bristol. Remember, he won here in the spring, so he's got to feel pretty good that they know how to get to victory lane and what it might take. But as you're talking about, they haven't been very strong in recent weeks. They've got to turn it around.
You know, Jeff Gordon was involved in a very scary-looking wreck at Watkins Glen, and he's been dealing with a bad back. He's talked about some procedures that he's had done to it. He was not concerned about the race at Michigan in terms of the downforce, G-forces that his back would endure, but I tell you what, it's a different story here at Bristol.
In that post-race interview, or in that post-wreck interview, the first thing he mentioned is, we got Bristol in 2 weeks, because he knows this place, yeah, it's mentally demanding, but obviously it's very physically demanding. We go back to the first practice we had, Jeff was 11th quickest, but look at his record here. 33 starts, 20 top 10s. He has the 5 wins as well as 5 poles, but he's led almost a total of 5 races here, almost 2,500 laps.
But Steve, you know what would be really good medicine for the 24? Just go to victory lane. All you have to do is put it away, get focused on what you have to do, get up there, make a good run. And right now, like I say, he's 4th quickest in his final practice. So if he can kind of continue that kind of momentum, you know, it's really well good for him.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. just a moment ago going down into turn 1. We saw this with a lot of other cars in that first practice. Car just gets down there, you're waiting on it to take a set, and it just takes off up the racetrack, sometimes tail first, sometimes nose first.
Either way, that's not good.
No, it's not. Not when you're trying to run around here as fast as you're running around here. But, you know, what a great run for them last week across the board.
Get ready. I'm like spinning out, wrecking loose.
And I think we pretty much had the visual to support that. But to me, that was a great weekend for them, not because they finished 3rd, because they put the beginning, the middle, and the end together of a race.
You mean a complete race?
Yes, sir, and the
I like
finish
that.
shows it.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Bristol is brought to you by Touch of Gray. Get rid of some gray, never all. And brought to you in part by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Drunk driving, over the limit, under arrest.
Okay, I can't pass this opportunity up.
Yes.
I think it was in This Week in NASCAR, Michael Waltrip, who read that same promo, he says, I think Darrell has proven them wrong. It gets rid of all the gray.
Well, he would know.
There he goes again, Steve.
And I'm saying Michael, no, I'm saying Michael may know.
Is that not exactly what Michael said?
Yes.
He said Darrell has proven them wrong. It gets rid of every bit of it if you use enough of it.
Guys, I've got news for you. You keep digging that hole, and next thing you know, we're going to get a text message.
Yep.
It's going to be from not one of the Waltrip, it's going to be from both of them.
I never have been killed by a text message before.
You never heard of a poison pen deal?
Jimmy Johnson, third quickest in this practice. Kurt Busch is the fastest. He's followed by Denny Hamlin. So far, rain staying away. See some blue sky over the turn, over turn 3. And Wendy, what's going on with Jeff Gordon?
Well, Jeff Gordon was out there for 11 laps at the beginning of this practice session. It kept getting looser and looser for Jeff Gordon. Steve Letarte, his crew chief, said, come on in, let's not use up the set of tires. Jeff Gordon said, I'm about to wreck. Those are words you don't want to hear from your driver. The car now back on scales as they continue to adjust on this race car. Jeff Gordon has 5 wins here at Bristol, most recently back in 2002. Jeff Gordon trying to get some more improvement and speed out of his race car before the rains come, because the radar still shows a big ugly green blob coming at us at Bristol.
Wendy, what a lot of people are working on up and down this pit road is consistency with their race cars. Take a look at the 17 car. They were good one run, really bad another. Crew chief Drew Blickensderfer told me he's been talking to Matt about that Razor's Edge, and that is the issue here. They say they have a very fast race car, but when they come in and make an adjustment on it, it'll go all out of whack very, very quickly. It's a tough deal here in practice trying to get it dialed in for qualifying and tomorrow night's race.
You know, we talked about Darrell, and Darrell, of course, won here 12 times, 7 in a row. And I think Darrell would be the first to tell you, yeah, I mean, you can't be ultra slow, but he, I think, for the most part, Jeff can confirm this. Yeah, he wanted to know what the stopwatch showed, but he wanted that car to drive good and to be comfortable. If he did that, you'll wear him down regardless of where you're at on the stopwatch.
We didn't always worry about who was the fastest. We wanted to get our car the most consistent. We had like a time that we felt like we needed to run lap after lap after lap, and that's what you really are trying to focus in on, guys, and make it happen. Guys, we're taking a look here at the David Rudiman ride. He's currently 26, but just a moment ago, going off in turn 1, you're talking about a dee-dah-do and a hospital hop all together. Watch what happens here.
Just takes off.
It doesn't look like a lot, but from up at top here, I mean, the back end and front end both, I mean, they were getting ready to leave and head to Johnson City.
And I think a lot of that happens is we talked in the first practice about the bump stops and the shock packers. I think what happens sometimes is when that thing goes down there and lands on those packers, on those front shocks, that's a lot of times when it'll shoot the thing up the racetrack and it'll just take off.
We've already heard about Jeff Gordon, how loose the racetrack feels to him, and probably a lot of these other drivers are feeling the same thing.
Carl Edwards has won the last 2 nighttime summer races here at the Bristol Motor Speedway, but right now just 24th overall. Jeff, I want to ask, here's a guy that's won the last 2 night races here. How much has this car evolved? How much has the track changed? In other words, are they working on a different setup than they had that was successful from 1 year ago?
I would say probably yes. You know, you've got to tweak on it. Even like, you know, when we came up here and won all those races with Darrell, we had a basic setup we tuned around. But we had to look and work at whatever track conditions were telling us, as well as the competition, because just because you ran that well the time before doesn't mean the competition didn't catch up. And that usually is what forces changes or makes you have to pick up or make an adjustment on your car, is what is it going to take to win that night. and I think that's where Carl and his guys are at right now. Yeah, we got a basic setup, but we need to make sure we've got enough car or enough tunability to be able to make it faster, or need to slow it down and tighten it up. Whatever you have to do, you got to build it into the car.
See Casey Kane there in the 9 car, 13th quickest so far in this practice session.
Started 5th, finished 5th here in March.
Still can't breathe either. Only 105 points to the good inside the top 12.
This is a tough place to catch your breath.
Yes, it is.
Let's take a look at our track description for the Bristol Motor Speedway, brought to you by our friends at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. 0.533, she's a half mile, banking between 26 and 30 degrees.
And basically no straightaway at all, 650 feet. But how about that number right there? And I think that's a conservative number. Name me any sporting event, Super Bowl, it doesn't matter, that even comes close to half that number of people. And I guarantee you, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, but to me, one of the most exciting moments of our sport is tomorrow night, about twilight, when those 43 cars take the green flag, and it absolutely looks like 10 million flash bulbs going off at one time. It's to me, it's still a huge rush and one of the more exciting times of our Sprint Cup Series season.
It may look like 10 million, but it's only probably 160,000.
But it looks like a bunch.
It does.
Bob Dillner, what's going on with Dale Earnhardt Jr. in that 88 bunch?
Well, Steve, basically it's back to the drawing board for the 88 bunch down here. That car was horrible in its first run, 31st quick on the board. And Junior told Lance McGrew, his crew chief, the car is wrecking loose. So after careful deliberation, the team has decided to put it back up on jack stands, change the setup completely, and give it another go with a completely different setup, Wendy.
Bob, on this area of the pit road, Kurt Busch finds himself in that race car trying to get it to turn better. Now in the first practice session, he needed the same exact thing. Now it's a little bit snug on exit. He has to put too much wheel into it. Needs to be better on exit is what Kurt Busch keeps reiterating to crew chief Pat Trison. It felt like it got a little bit tighter from the first practice session. They're throwing some new springs into that car before Kurt Busch can get back out there. Right now, he was at the top of the chart.
You know, Jeff, the good thing, you can make changes here and get out there and run a lot of laps in a hurry because of how quick you can get around this racetrack.
Yeah, it's true, but one of the biggest things that we run into at this racetrack, we talked about it, it's a half-mile high bank racetrack, but it's so noisy down there. You can hear whenever Wendy or Bob's opening their mic how much trouble it is for them to communicate to us. The same problem is also there for the crews to be able to communicate with one another when they're making these adjustments. So you got to pay attention. A lot of things are a little more difficult here. Taking a look right now at Tony Stewart. And Tony, you know, he didn't really get going that well in the first practice, and even in this second practice, he's only 17th quickest, but everybody's looking for that comfort level. They're trying to get the car not only be quick, but to be able to make it turn through the center of the corner, be able to run up off the bottom if you want to, make it work through the middle, just in case that second or third lane comes in. And Larry, watching the racetrack, I think it's changed a couple times. I think the Nationwide guys made it blacken up, but I noticed it looked to me like almost the racetrack changed color after the first practice, like the Cup cars kind of wiped some of that rubber back off. So I think the track itself has been changing just because of the two compounds that these series are running.
And I think we should bring that up today because we hadn't talked about it since earlier in the Nationwide Series practice. On most weekends, if we look at Sam Hornish in the 77 car, take back into the garage here. I'll tell you the story on the tires in just in a moment. This was going off through 1 and 2. Same thing we've seen. Now that's sideways loose wrecking right there. But back to the tire story is on most weekends you run the same left side and right side tire, Nationwide Series and Sprint Cup Series. But what Goodyear NASCAR did, they came here back in July and did a tire test. They also went to Dover a couple of weeks ago and did a tire test there with the Sprint Cup Series. And what they elected to do is a lot of it had to do from all the testing they did in Indianapolis for so many times. Is the Nationwide Series cars, they have the same left side tire as the Sprint Cup cars. But the right side is the same right side that the Cup cars raced in Indy a few weeks ago. The Sprint Cup cars are on the same combination we ran here in March, but this combination that the Nationwide Series cars are running here is what the Cup cars will run in Dover, the second race of the chase. So there's definitely a difference in that right side tire, and I think there's a huge difference in the amount of rubber it puts down on the track.
Jeff Gordon right now, a 5-time winner, 5-time pole sitter, is 10th overall. His teammate, Mark Martin, has just jumped to the top of the timing and scoring monitor. So Martin, who makes his 1,000th career NASCAR start here Saturday night, is now the quickest.
Now there's Kurt Busch. We just saw how loose he got off, and you can tell that car is not up under him on the exit of the corner. Brand new race car they brought here this weekend, never been on the racetrack. They ran a bunch of laps in that first practice, but right now it looks like they got the front turning. They need to get the back of the car hooked up.
20 minutes into a 90-minute practice, the final practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams here at the Bristol Motor Speedway.
Thursday, don't miss Big Block Thursday on Speed. 3 big hours of races, chases, and crashes with Pinks all out at 8, jacked at 9, and wrecked at 10. Got plans Thursday night? Well, you do now. Big Block Thursday beginning at 8 Eastern, only on Speed.
Big Boy Hammond announces that promo with authority.
I like that night.
Confident.
I do.
With authority.
Telling you, it's my kind of night.
Nicely done.
This is riding with Jeff Burton in the 31 car. Jeff really starting to move up the racetrack. We saw in the first practice they were working the bottom and about one groove off the bottom. Now we're starting to see them even a second groove, which is one of the great things about this new configuration that we've had here for a couple of years. The progressive banking, you saw it in the track description.
You know, and I'm kind of challenging, I guess, our crew down on pit road. If they get a chance, I'd love to be able to try to figure out what these guys are thinking and why they're not down the bottom. I mean, normally when you come to Bristol, you hunt the bottom. And now all of a sudden, these guys are working up a groove like you'd run at Michigan or Atlanta. It's just kind of out of place. I mean, it's kind of strange. I mean, you would think you'd work your car as much as you could down low, and when you go high, when the car kind of like gave up, I mean, that would be like your escape route. But now I'm almost like he thinks there's speed up there.
And we've seen that almost since they completely reconfigured this track a couple years ago.
Bob Dooner with an update on Mark Martin.
Mark Martin pretty happy with his race car. Of course, he's on top of the board right now, but he said, guys, I'm going to climb out. I'm going to relax a little bit. Let me digest everything, and let's go make our mock run. So that's the next step for Alan Gustafson. Mark Martin, you see him sitting right there. He's just taking everything in. He's been looking at the timing charts. He's been looking at some of the other competitors and what they're doing. But Mark Martin pretty happy with his race car.
Thank you, Bob. Ryan Newman. 2 pole positions here at Bristol for Ryan Newman. He's 11th overall in his Chevrolet, working his 14th lap of practice.
Guys, do you remember the day that he broke the track record and went sub 15 seconds on here?
March of 2003.
I mean, it was unbelievable. I just never thought I'd ever see anybody run that fast around this racetrack in a stock car.
14.908. Average almost 129 miles an hour around this high bank half-mile track.
Scott Wimmers behind the wheel, that number 4 car. Morgan McClure Motorsports down the road in Abingdon, Virginia.
And Steve, you got to give these guys some credit. During the break between the 2 practices, they have found some speed in this number 4 car and got him in a competitive kind of like position because he's a go or go homer. Great effort so far by them because they haven't had a chance to do any testing. This is the first time they've been to the racetrack with this car. So everybody so far has done a great job. He would be the 4th quickest of the go or go homers, 20th.
Yeah, not including Terry Labonte. The 4th slowest right now would be David Gilliland, who was very quick in that first practice session. Max Pappas, Tony Raines, Mike Wallace, Terry Labonte will get in this show either on time or the championship provisional.
There's a look at the drivers who have the considerable pressure of having to qualify here on their time and speed.
Down the list right there, you see Regan Smith in the 78 car. And there he is on the racetrack. Great news for him, Steve, as far as his 2010 season is concerned.
Yep, they've been running a limited schedule. Next year, they announced just this week, next year, They will compete in the entire 2010 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series schedule. And Larry, that's great news, because Ryan, if you give Regan Smith some more time, you mentioned the first practice, he's finished every race he started, and he just gets more impressive.
And the team gets more impressive. You know, they've run that limited schedule. They've qualified for basically every event they've showed up for where they got it in. And I think that's going to be a great deal for those guys. Now, here's Terry Labonte. We talked about him. Terry has a pole here at Bristol in 2 wins. And it just seems like back in the day that Terry Labonte had a way of finding that black 3 car, or that black 3 car had a way of finding him, especially the latter part of the race.
Yeah, and now he's in a black car.
A lot of controversy between Terry Labonte. Friendly controversy, I might say, between Terry Labonte and Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, I mean,
Friendly?
Yeah, because, you know, they get a little bit miffed here at the racetrack, but they were kind of like hunting buddies away from the racetrack. Controversy. Kyle
Seems
Busch.
to follow Kyle Busch. Mark Martin leading the way here at Bristol. Stay with us here on Speed. With 3 races remaining in the race to the chase, Tony Stewart is the only driver who has clinched a spot. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson mathematically could do so when they leave here after the checkered flag on Saturday night.
All they need is 322 points, and they'll be breathing easy. I don't think there's any problem in making the chase, but they'd be locked in.
Because that's the most points you can gain or lose in 161 points. And at Speed, we promote the fact these 12 guys are going to start the last 2 or 3 races. That I don't like using that number 190 something. It makes no sense whatsoever.
And you see just outside, Brian Vickers coming off a win at Michigan.
Hey.
Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, very much alive.
The battle line is drawn right there between 12th and 13th, and only 1 point separates them. I mean, it is going to get ugly over the next 3 races.
Wendy Venturini, what's going on with Carl Edwards?
Well, not much right now for Carl Edwards. It's his team that is up to a whole lot right now. They're switching over his race car. Carl Edwards patiently waiting here with Bob Osborne. Much of the Mark Martin approach, just hanging back, watching the guys go into turn 1. He's been watching the time, the sheets on the monitor with Bob Osborne as well. You know, the way this racetrack is set up, you guys know the haulers are located in the center of the racetrack of this half mile. So the drivers, they stay nearby their cars when the team is switching over their setups. They keep those earplugs in their ears to protect their ears. Most of the drivers are watching from pit wall. Right next to him is also Jeff Gordon. And we just saw Kurt Busch jump back up to the top of the chart, guys. He just put on stickers, and he said, man, the stickers do you good here at Bristol. Bob?
The same can be said for Kyle Busch right now, sitting down on the wall watching his team perform duties on his number 18 car. They're switching over to qualifying trim. In that last run for Kyle, he said it had been tight all session, but now it is finally way better. They had a shock adjustment with shock specialist Charlie Orr. He does a great job with this machine. Kyle is very happy with this race car. He knows he's got a lot to lose or a lot to win here at Bristol, a track that he has been oh so good at.
I would say he's been oh so good, and just recently on Wednesday night he won the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race, and that was his 54th career win in the NASCAR's Top 3 Series. Ties Lee Petty. Now we know all of Lee's wins were in the Grand National, what it was called then, now Sprint Cup division, but ties Lee Petty with that 54th win.
Juan Pablo Montoya, 17th overall in this practice, working his 19th lap.
They fought some brake issues in that first practice, as did a couple of other cars, so I'm sure they hopefully have got that resolved, and they were working like everybody else, trying to get one in, the balance. That's what you're trying to get, balance. And that means the front is gripping just as good as the rear and vice versa. That's a big challenge at this half-mile racetrack.
Joey Logano was quick in first practice. He's also pretty sporty right now. He is 6th overall.
You know the amazing things with the runs that he's had lately? He's only 48 points out of 17th. Yeah, you know, obviously not going to make the chase, but I would say with, you know, the 13 races to go that we have, including here tomorrow night, these guys may be starting to try to put a little dot on the target of finishing in the top 15.
We know a lot of times, guys, we want to talk about, you know, what a difference a year makes between some of these teams and how they come back. How about a difference a season makes? The way he started out, when we talked about it, he was 35th in the points at one time. and a lot of people scratching their heads saying, man, maybe it's too soon. Maybe we're expecting too much. And it's like all of a sudden it started working. Greg Zipperdelli kept believing in his driver, and he now fought his way back up to where he, like you say, just outside of that top 15.
Wendy.
A funny story about Joey Logano. Earlier this week, the 20 team, they had a surprise birthday party for one of their crew members. Bruce D'Alessandro turned 50 years old. Joey Logano was at the party. Of course, Bruce, who was born in 1959, they had all those symbols up and little tidbits of info. Joey looked at what happened in 1959, and it stated, of course, that Hawaii became the 50th state in 1959, and actually it happened today, 50 years ago. Joey looked at it and said, whoa, Bruce, Hawaii wasn't even a state when you were born. Joey Logano just showing his age at that party earlier this weekend. I had a good laugh at it.
I think the three of us better stay away from that, considering Hawaii was not a state when none of us were born.
Well, 1959 was a good year.
When Larry Mack was born.
And Steve Burns. Kurt Busch still the quickest. Stay with us here at Bristol Motor Speedway.
A bunch of babies.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup Final Practice from Bristol is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. And brought to you in part by the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Be there when the lights come on as NASCAR Sprint Cup night racing comes to Atlanta Motor Speedway Labor Day weekend. Go to atlantamotorspeedway.com for event and special ticket information. Meanwhile, back at the Bristol Motor Speedway, and you know what, guys, it's pretty amazing. We had a 3-hour nationwide series practice that was incident-free. 90-minute cup practice, no incidents there, no bench sheet metal. We had some loose race cars. So far, so good in this practice. We're 36 minutes into another 90 minutes.
Are you trying to jinx these guys?
No, I am saying.
Are you impressed?
I'm very impressed.
And more amazing than any of that, the weather has stayed good for us.
Bob, what's going on with that 39 car, Ryan Newman?
Well, right now, Ryan Newman is running pretty well. He's in the 11th spot on the timing chart. And for the first time today, he's actually happy with the race car. But we have some interesting video that took place just before this practice session began. You take a look at Tony Gibson and Ryan Newman really talking there. I asked Tony what he was talking about right there. He says Ryan has been really struggling with this race car to get it to turn in the corner. He said we can get it to turn in, we can get it to turn off, we just cannot get it to turn in the center. And that's why Ryan Newman was running the high side, but you can see now he's trying to pass Elliott Sadler. He's back down to the bottom of the racetrack, and Ryan Newman very happy with this race car because it's finally cutting in the center of the corner.
And of course, what you have to be careful there is that we start to see him really go up to the top groove up in 3 and 4, is all of a sudden you'll have it turning too good in the middle and it'll be loose off the corner. So
it just never ends.
This track, it absolutely never ends because you're not hunting tenths, you're hunting hundreds and thousands. And here's a car that really struggled in that first practice session, Kevin Harvick in the 29 car. And things don't look a whole lot better right now. He's 39th quickest. He's run a total of 22 laps. Looks like he's coming back into Gil Martin in that group. And, you know, this was one of the tracks we talked about in the spring with the 29 car and Kevin Harvick, is when you've got Kevin Harvick struggling here, you know things are not right. There's just few racetracks with Harvick, Phoenix, Loudon, Richmond, Bristol, a lot of the short tracks. When you struggle there, you've got issues.
Yeah, they're 0.4 of a second off.
They're 39.
Still 39.
Casey Mears, his teammate in the 07 car. Casey has run a total of 40 laps, and he's 40th quickest. Really cool paint scheme on the 07 car. It's a snow camo toast to the troops. And this is commemorating the Jack Daniels USO salute to the troops. They're going to have a stuffing party here tomorrow. Richard Childress Racing, everybody's going to engage in this. Stuffing bags to send over to our troops that's fighting for our freedom each and every day.
Snow camo. Do you hunt elk in those handles? Snow camo?
No, you know, you hunt snowman and snow camo, you know.
You'll say anything Ted Lakaitis, our producer, says in your ear, won't you?
Yeah, you got to hear what I don't say about you. He tells me to say. So, yeah, you got to watch Ted.
He's bad to stir the pot.
Exactly. But
Jimmy Johnson, 4th overall right now. When is NASCAR performance? Speaking of the 48.
and the star.
Chad Canal.
Chad
No.
Chad Canal.
No, co-star.
Co-star. No, I thought he was a star.
Doug Richard is a co-star. I just guide the traffic. That's all I do. But NASCAR Performance airs at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. The good people at CNR Racing Radiators gave us a lot of parts and pieces, and we've already shot the show. We shot it in the Garage Mahal at the Speed Studios.
So you did a field trip last week. This week you're in the studio.
We are.
Yeah.
Right there where you shoot this week in NASCAR.
Yeah. There's the star right there, NASCAR Performance.
Co-star.
Canals. Co-star.
Things are looking up for NASCAR Performance.
They are. We've moved into the studio for a couple weeks.
Fancy.
But you know, back to the 48 cars, we look at Elliott Sadler, our trackside teammate. This is one of those 6 racetracks that 48 car has never won on. Chad Canals told me, you know what, that it matters, but it doesn't matter. We're running good at Bristol now. In fact, you go back to the spring race, they qualified and finished 3rd with that very car that they have here. Elliott Sadler, you see Stanley on his car. Now, what the good people at Stanley have done, if Elliott Sadler can win this race here tomorrow night, and he has won here, he won here back in 2001, Stanley will donate $1 million to the Children's Miracle Network. What a great deal. And I'm sure Elliott would nothing more love to celebrate on top of the Goodyear Tire Building and watch a check for $1 million written to those good people.
Elliott Sadler, 34th overall. Kurt Busch is the quickest 5-time winner here at Bristol. Celebrate Jeff Hammond's birthday on September 9th by supporting Tony Stewart's Prelude to the Dream, the Eldora Speedway in Rossburg, Ohio. Several charitable causes benefit. You go to HBO pay-per-view and watch the Prelude to the Dream on a short track, dirt track. A lot of NASCAR stars are going to be there.
It is a great day in September. Make sure you tune in.
Was Hawaii a state?
Oh, no.
Wasn't even thought about. They were still trying to find it.
When Hammond was born, we just had 13 original states.
No, that's Darrell. No, I take it back. That was Dick Berggren. Dick, and then Darrell followed Dick.
Okay.
Talked about Kevin Harvick just a minute ago. He's run a total of 25 laps.
Larry, it's hard to believe Harvick has just 3 top 10 finishes this season.
But you know, to me, what was a little bit encouraging as far as Richard Childress Racing, they had a good day at Michigan last week. We know Jeff Burton, that 31 group, they struggled a little bit. Harvick finished 12th. You had Clint Boyer, you had Casey Mears finished 6th. Good top 10 runs. Across the board, I thought that was a very encouraging day for Richard Childress Racing.
You can't keep that team down. Richard Childress is not going to let that organization struggle like that, Steve. They're going to fix their problems and work it out. Think about it like this. How many years ago was it when Jeff Gordon didn't win a race? And everybody thought the sky was falling, the world was coming to an end the way we knew it. And now all of a sudden, he's back up there again, winning races. He's competitive every week. Sometimes you have years like this, and you have to rebound.
Wendy, Juan Pablo Montoya is 18th overall, 32 laps on the board in this practice.
Yeah, Steve, frustration, though, is what I hear in Juan Pablo's voice on the radio in that race car he's climbed out as they make some adjustments right now. He said it's really loose in, really tight center, really loose off. The bumps are worse over that right rear. He is not happy with this race car. Things have been coming easily for JPM the last few weeks. Today, not so easy at Bristol. He said he's having to rub the brakes all the way through the corner, and he says that really stinks for JPM. Bob?
Different scenario down here in Greg Biffle's pit. He is happy as can be. Frustrating a little while ago. He said, I don't know what to do to this race car. Greg Irwin put his heads together with his engineers. They came up with something that Greg really liked in this race car. So he's a happy camper. They're going to a mock qualifying trim right now. But Holly Hollywood, before in this practice, you were wondering why the guys are running the top groove. Well, I spent some time with Greg just about 5 minutes ago, and he told me, you know what? It's just so darn slick down the bottom, they cannot keep their momentum up. So it's so much easier to move a half a groove or a groove up, and they can be that much quicker by doing that.
And Bob, that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you, because you know this racetrack's going to change a lot, but I just don't normally see guys work that high side, you know, trying to get their cars to be comfortable up there to them. So it's like a totally different approach. Normally you're going to do everything you can possible, Steve, to come up with a setup to get on the bottom of the racetrack, and then when it doesn't work, well, then there's your insurance policy. You slide up and you try to make a go of it.
There's Eric Almirola. He's 30th quickest in the 09 car this week. Now remember, when the season started, he was in the 8 car for Earnhardt Ganassi the first 7 races. Here in the spring race, he qualified 18th and finished 35th. And now he's back in a Cup car for the first time since ran Texas back in the spring.
Brad Keselowski won a race at Talladega in that car earlier this season. We've seen several different drivers in the 09. And Larry, let's talk in more detail about this tire situation.
Yeah, this is the Nationwide Series cars, and of course they had their 3 hours of practice and they're getting ready to qualify. Goodyear learned a lot from the 6 or 7 tests that they did at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Greg Stucker, Rick Campbell, 2 of the engineers told me, said, we will be able to apply a lot of that technology to other racetracks in the future. So what Goodyear did, they came back here in July with a couple of NASCAR Camping World Truck Series trucks, 2 Nationwide Series cars, and then they brought 1 Cup car, Casey Mears. And they ran through a lot of combinations. The left side tire on both series here, and also including the Truck Series Wednesday night, it's the same left side tire. Where the difference comes is the right side tire. So what they decided to do based on that test and a test they did at Dover a couple of 3 weeks ago is they've got a different tire on the Nationwide Series cars and the trucks the other night. It's the right side tire that we raced at Indianapolis Motor Speedway about a month ago. The Cup cars, they've got the same combination that we've run here for the last year and a half. Now, that combination that the Nationwide Series cars are running here is what the Cup cars will run at Dover, the second race of the chase. I just think that Goodyear wanted to get a race on a concrete surface with that new combination, but they elected not to come just yet. I think because things are so tight on these teams trying to get in the chase, they didn't want to create a variable with that right side tire. Biggest difference, the right side tire on the Nationwide Series cars, just like at Indy, it puts a lot of rubber down on the racetrack. This right side tire doesn't seem to put as much rubber down. Did I explain that good?
I am on board.
Okay.
I feel like I've just watched NASCAR Performance.
That actually airs at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. just made a nice pickup from 35th to 14th. Stay with us here on Speed. Join us tonight on Trackside here on Speed. Legendary team owner Richard Childress will join us, as well as David Bruneman and young Trevor Bayne. That's at 11 Eastern tonight on Speed Trackside Live. Tell you what, Dave Blaney is really quick. He is 5th overall, and more importantly, he is fastest of the go or go home drivers. Let's go to Bob.
That is very important, but you know what? It's not a surprise that he's quick, Steve, because he qualified in the top 10 the last time we were here. How are things going for you today, Dave?
It's going good. These guys had a really balanced car here in the spring, qualified good, and come back with it kind of the same way. And all the clouds kind of come in and out and change things a little bit, so we're taking our time here, but so far so good.
I'll tell you what, Dave Blaney running well, and you know what? His son Ryan Blaney running very well in super late models this year in the past series.
And of course, his dad, Lou Blaney, was a great racer in the Midwest.
See Denny Hamlin in the 11 car. I think what we're going to start to see is we're getting down now to about 35 minutes to go in this practice. I think we'll see a lot of our guys starting to make a practice qualifying run. This is final practice. This is what we call the modified impound schedule. We had the hour-and-a-half practice earlier. This hour-and-a-half practice. They'll qualify about 5:40 this afternoon. They get their cars back. They are not impounded, but there's no more practice after qualifying. In fact, I'm getting a word right now that actually the 14 car, Tony Stewart, our points leader, he's getting ready to maybe make a practice qualifying run here shortly.
Denny Hamlin finished second here in the spring, third 1 year ago, and Martin Truex Jr. was quickest in that first practice. Right now, 18th overall. He's put 46, now 47 laps on his Bass Pro Shop Chevrolet.
And Steve, we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but the drawing for the qualifying lineup is already out, and Martin will be going out 21st. Everything happens here so fast at Bristol. Really, where you draw to qualify is maybe not be a huge difference like you see at a lot of different racetracks. Plastic racetrack being concrete, it doesn't change a whole lot, but mentally, a lot of guys don't like going out first, and that's what Jamie Murray's going to wind up doing. He is well along with Juan Pablo Montoya, number 1 and number 2 as far as qualifying.
Bobby Labonte back in the more familiar red, white, and blue paint scheme. Ask.com. '24th overall. Bobby Labonte, the Yates Racing Ford. Nationwide qualifying headed your way here on Speed after this practice.
50 Nationwide Series cars here. So we know 7 cars in that series will not be making the show. 47 here, 4 will be going home out of this series.
Back to Wendy.
Guys, you can almost hear the wheels turning when you hear these drivers and crew chiefs communicating, and that's what's happening in the 11 pit stall right now. Denny Hamlin in the race car. Mike Ford feverishly taking down notes and listening to everything Denny Hamlin gives him on feedback. He's been a little freer into 1. He needs more grip on the exit. The right rear, the entry of turn 1, the right rear is tending to give him some issues right now, which is the same thing that was reported from Juan Pablo Montoya. And I do want to make a quick little weather report. This is the warmest it's been since the very beginning of the first practice session. The sun came out. It's beating down the track surface over here on this side of pit road. Feels much warmer than it has been all day long, and the skies are blue. I don't see any rain. I think it's missed us here in Bristol.
You know, Steve, we look at Denny Hamlin's numbers here. They're very, very, very deceiving. He has 7 starts here. He finished second in the spring. He has 4 top 10s, but I don't know how many times he was leading the race on the white flag lap and lost it. I go back to a couple years ago this race. Had an engine failure in practice, had to start at the rear of the field, drove to the top 10 without the aid of caution, and blew up later on in the race.
Well, how about the spring race in 2007? It was the debut race for the car of tomorrow. Everybody remembers Kyle Busch won the race.
Right.
Denny Hamlin led 177 laps that day.
And I think that's when he had the fuel pump cable issues.
A little bit of a misfire on fuel. Here's a guy that's hoping to make a start here today. He's 42nd right now on the speed charts, number 13 of Max Pappas.
He's got work to do, though, Jeff. Right now, he's the next to the slowest go-homer, trying to get some seat time Wednesday night by running the Camping World Truck Series race here, because he's seeing Bristol for the very first time.
Almost an hour into this 90-minute practice. Caution is out for the first time, and it's for debris. So we'll get the track cleaned up and come right back to Bristol. Stay with us here on Speed. See the latest NASCAR photos from every track every weekend on SpeedTV.com. Get behind-the-scenes access with our exclusive Garage Pass galleries. See the cars, the crew, even your favorite drivers. Check out the NASCAR photo galleries on SpeedTV.com.
Jamie McMurray, the 26 car, right now 38th quickest. Started reading a lot of things about Jamie this week, that he would not be returning to the 26 car for 2010. We know that Roush Fenway, they have to be shaved down to 4 teams. We know not the sponsor they have here, Irwin Tools, but the Crown Royal will be moving to the 17 car, Matt Kenseth, in 2010. They're trying to put a sponsor together to where he will become a 3rd team, maybe at Yates Racing with Paul Menard, Bobby Labonte. But the biggest thing I hear going on, he may actually end up going back to Ganassi, where pretty much he ran for several years over there in Cup.
And got a win driving the 40 car at Lowe's Motor Speedway. Sterling Marlin was hurt.
Larry, you got one of those? Got a pair of those vice grips anywhere?
I do. I think he brought us a pair on the trackside one time.
Yeah, we did. Brought us some nice tools from Irwin. You got to watch them vice grips though, Steve. Get your finger, pinch them in there if you're not careful. Larry, what do you use yours for?
Work on Brandon's little UARA car.
Okay.
I still get these old hands dirty, believe it or not.
Well, Reed Sorensen is 3rd overall right now. Let's go to Bob Dillner.
Sammy John's the crew chief for the 2nd week with Reed Sorensen. This was their 2nd mock qualifying run. They did one in the 1st practice session where it was a little bit tight. Well, this one was a little bit loose, but it's certainly to Reed's liking. He says we're going to do another run just to see if we can do a little bit better, but so far so good for the 43 guys.
You know, we talk about the agendas here in 2009. We got in this conversation a little bit at Michigan last week. You know, guys trying to make the chase, guys trying to win the championship like Jimmy Johnson in his 48 car going for 4 consecutive. Teams like the Red Bull 82 team trying to get in the top 35. But there's a lot of drivers out there right now. I think the future for 2010 is unknown, like Reed Sorensen, like David Strimmy. Like Jamie McMurray, possibly even throw Casey Mears into that mix. Where will they be? What will they be doing in 2010?
I think what you're saying is don't just focus on the chase. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot happening, and there will be a lot happening until the checkered flag waves at Homestead Miami Speedway the weekend before Thanksgiving.
And the thing is right now, we're talking about drivers, sponsors, not to mention, how about all the crew chiefs right now that their names are kind of flying around up in the air, what they're going to do next year. Rumor had it that Larry Mack was going to go back on top of the box. Yep.
What?
And let me classify that as strictly a rumor.
Did you deny it?
I will deny that.
Okay, good.
I'm not like Brett Favre. I will deny that and live up to it.
You're not going to be retired, unretired, unretired, retired?
Nope. Never said that I was retired. I just said I took a sabbatical. But I've enjoyed my sabbatical.
Denny Hamlin is 4th overall. Kurt Busch still the quickest. Followed by Mark Martin. You just heard Bob update us on Reed Sorensen, who's 3rd.
Denny has run a total of 47 laps. Looks like some of the most laps. Ryan Newman has run 55. Casey Kane 58. Tony Stewart 55. Greg Biffle has run 54 laps, as well as Jeff Burton. I tell you, the sun is starting to come back out again. I've got to believe in a small way they're chasing this racetrack just a little bit.
I agree. I think that's one of the biggest problems they're facing right now is the thing is getting hot and cooling off. And one deal makes you loose in and make it turn in the center. The next thing you know, the track changes back the other way. You adjust it. It can be frustrating here at Bristol.
But you know, one thing I will say about the concrete surface, and of course with Cup, we only race on 2 full-blown concrete surfaces here in Dover, is it still gains or loses grip as it heats up or cools down, but it doesn't seem to change as much as an asphalt surface. And I think Darrell always has given a great analogy. You know, walk out on your concrete driveway barefooted in the summer and then step out on the main road. Which one's going to burn your feet probably the most is going to be that asphalt out there on that road.
This track was asphalt up until 1992. Whoa!
Kyle Busch.
Woo!
I would say he will be coming back in. I keep getting reports that he is not very happy the way that car's driving, and I think we just got a visual support that it's not very good.
I think I just scared Hammond.
Coming off turn 2.
Rev up.
When you're at that camera angle and you can read the sponsor and the door number on the right side, not good.
It's a good save.
He's amazing. All right, well, we'll all catch our breath here at Bristol Motor Speedway. Kurt Busch still the quickest. Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow. Practice continues here at the Bristol Motor Speedway, and it's time for our Sprint Now moment. A couple of close calls. Dale Earnhardt Jr. gets extremely loose. Same for Sam Hornish. Same spot, but he saves it. On board with David Rudiman. He gets the nose pointed towards Johnson City as Jeff Hammond says, watch Michael Waltrip. Little how do you do with Johnny Andretti, and then just moments ago, hang on.
Ooh, he saved the biggest for last. Ooh.
Well, we saw Kyle Busch head to the pit lane, and Bob Dillner has an update.
Steve, there's no arguing that that boy can drive.
Yes,
I tell
sir.
you what, he hung on to it, that's for sure. And basically what Kyle said over the radio is that the car is not agreeing with itself. The front end wants to shove the nose, the rear end wants to come loose. So right now, a right rear spring change and a packer change on the right front, Wendy. Actually, back to you guys.
So actually what they're trying to do is work with the right rear spring to get the rear hooked up. They're trying to work with the packers on the shocks that controls, you know, the travel to get the front to stick. So they're working on both ends at once, and they better be, because we're running out of time.
Running out of time, and it looked like you needed some pretty serious adjustment to it based off what we saw just a moment ago. That's not the kind of thing you want to have this close to the end of practice, and especially this close to qualifying, because, hey, when qualifying's all said and done, you're done. You have to race it Saturday night the way it is.
See, A.J. Allmendinger made his very first career start here back 2 years ago in March of 2007. Finished 16th here in the spring race.
And we saw Reed Sorensen a moment ago. He's fourth fastest in the 43. His teammate Allmendinger way back in 31st. But again, and we've said this throughout the day, the difference between the fastest, slowest is about. Go ahead, Jeff Hammond.
I was going to say, almost between the teammates right now, it's just 0.2 seconds
exactly.
between being where he is in 31st and where Reed is in 4th.
0.2 seconds. Wendy.
Well, we've documented this before. There's not very many racetracks Jimmy Johnson has been on that he hasn't won. Bristol is one of those tracks he's been winless. His best finish is third here twice, one of them being in the springtime race here in Bristol. So Jimmy Johnson definitely wants to add a win to the column of the Bristol Motor Speedway, the world's fastest half mile. His crew chief that you see right there, Chad Knaus, has been busy at work, looking over notes, looking over his laptop, trying to figure out what they want to do to get Jimmy more comfortable. The only thing Jimmy and Chad Knaus have talked about on the public radio communication is just about the lap times, and Chad Knaus encouraging Jimmy Johnson and how consistent his laps have been. 14 laps, he is right now 7th on the practice chart.
Yeah, they definitely have not run as many laps as a lot of the teams, but this is the same car that they qualified and finished third with back in the spring. Jimmy and a host of others were honored up at the White House on the South Lawn this past Wednesday by President Obama. A lot of other NASCAR past champions, including our own Darrell Waltrip, Dale Jarrett, Rusty Wallace, Richard Petty, joining that group up there Wednesday when they visited President Obama.
Watch that, and President Obama said that NASCAR is the quintessential American sport.
Truly agree, very
well
much.
Said. Mark Martin, third overall. For a while, he was atop the timing and scoring monitor here at the Bristol Motor Speedway, making his 1,000th NASCAR start here tomorrow night.
You numero uno again?
Yes, indeed. Just jumped to the top.
Up there.
Matter of fact, Greg Biffle's now second.
And you know that run right there, if you watch closely, when we saw that exit of turn 4, no car was slideways. We're seeing a lot of cars not get good forward bite up off the corner.
Would you like to explain slideways?
That means I'm sliding and I'm sideways, but I'm still moving ahead, moving forward,
ahead,
just
moving
like
forward.
that 5 car.
Yep.
Kurt Busch, the 2 car, third quickest. He's run a total of 18 laps with his brand new race car they unloaded this morning, seeing the racetrack for the very first time.
It's interesting, you read Kurt's comments about why he's been so successful here. Patience.
Well, you know, the other thing he attributes it to, he said his first trip here, remember, all we have is a pedestrian walk-through tunnel, and we have not had that long. He said the first time here that he crashed out early, and he figured out there was no way out of this racetrack. He had to sit on top of the hauler and watch about 400-something laps of this race. He said, you know, I got 2 choices. I can sit on top of that hauler, or I can be out there making laps by being smarter in the early part of the race.
Patience.
Patience.
Let's go to Wendy.
And Kurt Busch is trying to be patient with his car this practice session, but it's much of the same feedback. You see him fighting the car right there. Almost wrecked it right there, according to Kurt Busch live on that radio. He is a little bit worried about his race car. He says it needs to turn better in the center. He's been saying it all day long, both the first practice session and this final practice session. Kurt Busch wheeling it. He's afraid that the changes they've made have made him a little bit too free on exit, as you saw that. It was a good save by Kurt Busch right there.
I think we'll be able to see that right here. His last time out, what Wendy was just talking about. It's coming up off turn 2, I think it is. It's up the racetrack, and I believe as this track starts to gain track temperature with the sun out a little bit, these guys are definitely losing rear grip.
Steve, he is really very lucky he didn't get up a little bit higher. You can see the marbles just about where he got into, and if that right rear had gotten to those marbles, he'd have definitely slapped that outside wall.
That was nearly a tank slapper.
It really was.
Well, Mike Wallace is driving the 64 car this weekend. He is the slowest of the go or go home drivers. Just a reminder, coming up next, we'll have NASCAR Nationwide Series qualifying here on Speed. The Cup drivers qualify a little bit later on.
Now, right now, the 4 slowest go-or-go-homers, not including Terry Labonte, that we know will race is Mike Skinner, Tony Raines, Max Pappas, and Mike Wallace. Mike Skinner would be out at a 15.93. Scott Wimmer would be in at a 15.91. Hundredths, maybe even thousandths when it gets down to it.
Second practice coming to a close. Stay with us here on Speed for the Bristol Motor Speedway. Tomorrow on Speed, NASCAR Race Day blasts into Bristol, where we celebrate Mark Martin's 1,000th NASCAR start. Plus, Wendy Venturini gets the real deal with Junior Johnson. NASCAR Race Day built by the Home Depot live from Bristol tomorrow at 4:30 Eastern. Dale Earnhardt Jr. will also join the show.
I wonder if Wendy got offered any Moonlight Madness by Junior.
Whoops, whoops. Careful now.
Well, you know.
I didn't get any moonshine, but he did make a country breakfast. You know, we shot at 7 o'clock in the morning. They told me I had to be camera ready at 5:30 because I live about 90 minutes away. We get there at 7 a.m. They're serving breakfast to about 15, 16 men, one of them being Harry Gant, who just randomly walked in that morning. It was a very fun breakfast conversation. The plate in front of me, I think there was 7 kinds of breakfast meats, and I'm not sure I could identify all of them.
Hey,
I bet they were good.
But the good thing about it, though, Wendy, you go up there, it's at the farm. You go to the farm, you go to the garage right there, and Junior does all the cooking.
You know, Steve, we were talking about Denny Hamlin a while ago, and I think when you look at Tony Stewart, with 21 starts here and only 1 win, I think that is deceiving too as far as his performance. I don't know how many times he's been leading late in this race. He's led a total of 1,352 laps here. It just seemed like there was something that plagued him a lot in the closing stages of the races here, whether it was the spring race or the August race.
Yeah, like other cars running into him.
Like Kevin Harvick did a couple of years ago. He actually had some fuel pump cable issues as well in the early going when they were just trying to perfect that fuel pump driven cable system.
The thing about watching this race car, the 14, around the racetrack here at Bristol, that's the way I would expect to try to set a car. Trying to keep it down on the bottom of the racetrack. It looks like it's pretty well balanced. And then also watching the lap times, he's run over 71 laps. It looks like he's pretty consistent. Pretty consistent.
We know Tony Stewart will be running right around the bottom. In fact, what I'm seeing on the late exit of turn 4 and turn 2, let's see if he does it right here. Didn't do it there at turn 2, but turn 4, he almost just clips the black asphalt, which a lot of times will help your car to turn.
There he goes.
Did it right there, turn 4. He's running just a little lower in 4 than he is turn 2.
Now, to me, that's vintage Bristol line. That's the groove you want to run. Watch him right here, guys. He comes right here, starts turning down, flips that apron just a little bit.
And a lot of times, if your car is tight and the front end's not turning, what that will do, it'll de-wedge the car. It'll take wedge out just for a second, and when you do that, it'll help the car to turn. Got to be careful to do it if your car's loose, but a lot of times if the car's loose, the driver would never think about even turning the car that low.
He couldn't get it down
because
there.
he'd spin out.
Couldn't get it down.
Local fans here love that race car, the 4 car. Won back here in August of 1990 with Ernie Irvin aboard the Morgan McClure Motorsports engine. Let's go down to Bob Dillner.
Marcos Ambrose getting a lot better in that first practice session. The splitter was hitting the surface. It was bottoming out on the right front shock packer. He was not happy. Now a lot happier. It's a little bit loose in, and they're about to go out on their third mock qualifying run here. So Marcos Ambrose, who had such a good run here in the spring, is getting back to where he was when we were here several months ago.
If you can get it to where it's turning good and it comes off the corner good, if it's a little loose in, I'm not saying you can live with that, but that driver can control a big part of that. And one thing you also can do is crank a little bit of front brake in it. That'll help tighten the car up under braking getting in.
And you don't want to overdrive these corners, so sometimes I had to give up a little bit. That's where you want to do it. A little bit.
Mark Martin still the fastest here at Bristol. Closing minutes coming up. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Bristol is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. Less than 10 minutes remain in this final practice. Joe Nemechek in the 87 car. He is 21st overall, 4th of the go or go home driver.
And he was quick in that first practice session. He was well up in the top 10. And now Scott Speed actually just becomes the fastest of the go or go home cars. Scott is 4th quickest in that 82 car. We have 4 of the go or go homers up in the top 11. There's Scott. It's a team that continues to try to claw and fight to get back to the top 35 before, not before the chase starts, but obviously before the final race of the year at Homestead, because that means if you're in the top 35 after that race, you're guaranteed a starting spot in the first 5 races of 2010. And right now, they're 170 points behind Teresa Earnhardt, the owner of the 34 car.
Marcos Ambrose in the 47 car. He is, a moment ago, he was 20th.
Now he's 1st.
How about that? He's 2nd overall.
Tasmanian Devil has risen to the challenge.
That is impressive.
That's the same car that he finished 10th here in the spring, and that was a 10th place finish with an engine that was on 7 cylinders about the last 170, 80 laps of that race.
Speedway car, I believe, isn't it?
It was their backup Daytona car. They brought it here because they knew they would use the body up, and it ran so well they've not raced it since then.
My scoring monitor said Ambrose was 2nd. Jeff says it was 1st. They've run the identical time.
Yeah, the bad thing about it is Martin's ahead of Ambrose in the points, so he would get the nod if it was an official qualifying effort.
15.616.
And Jeff Gordon, who is 3rd, is 2 1,000ths of a second slower than those 2 guys.
Are you trying to say we got a log jam until just a moment ago?
Until Jimmy Johnson just ran a 15.56 on his practice qualifying run, and he's on the 2nd lap. Let's see if he even picks it up from there.
We're going to have a log jam till about 11 o'clock on Saturday night.
He actually slowed down at 10th, and I think we saw that in the first practice. It's almost like the money lap seems to be the first lap.
And that's a little bit different than what we've seen sometimes in years past. A lot of times you got to get a little heat in those tires to be able to get a little bit quicker lap, but right now it's working out for all these guys.
3 Hendrick cars in the top 4.
Jimmy McMurray, the 26 car, we just saw him right now. He is 16th quickest at a 15.731.
Everything happens so fast here.
Makes my head spin.
Tense.
Makes my neck sore.
Just a few minutes left in practice. We've dodged the raindrops. Now let's go to Bob Dillner.
Well, Clint Boyer very happy in the first practice, but they haven't been completely satisfied with this car. But they're not going out again. They're done for this practice. In fact, they've been done for about 15 minutes. I spoke to the crew and I said, okay, if you're not happy with the car, how come? And it goes back to something that Jeff Hammond and Larry McReynolds were talking about. They feel they were chasing the racetrack and the sun coming in, the sun going out. So instead of that, Clint Boyer and Shane Wilson just went up in the hauler. They're putting their heads together to try to figure out what they need to do for qualifying and hopefully get a good run there, a very fast one later on in qualifying. Wendy?
Much of the same story for Jimmy Johnson, Chad Canals. P1 on the chart. They just jumped to the top with one lap up there, a 15:56. That's much faster than he's run. Of course, his mock qualifying run, Jimmy got out of the car. It was all smiles with the 48 team, and Jimmy and Chad also made it to the 48 hauler to discuss some changes with this race car. It's very loud where the 48 is located. They basically are in turn one. It's where all the cars are leaving pit road in this first garage stall, and as the cars go into one, it's a very loud area of the racetrack, and it's where all the action is, I like to say. We have a good view of everything going on here in this practice session in these final minutes. It's the busiest it's been right here.
And Jimmy Johnson is a 15.560. Right now, with just about 3 or 4 minutes to go in this practice, Scott Wimmer in the 4 car would make the show at a 15.914. Tony Raines would go home at a 15.921. It's going to be so close in this qualifying coming up. Tony Stewart still out there making laps in this 14 car.
He's almost run 100 laps, Larry. He's run 95 laps in this practice, and he keeps digging all the way to the end. He will probably do that. I think he ran over 100 laps last time, didn't he?
Now, he actually was one of the cars that did not run a ton of laps. He ran 49 laps, so he's going to be well over 150 laps for both practice sessions.
He seems like he's on a long run here right now.
I would hate to have to make my living knowing that I was 2/100ths slower of the car in front of me. That's pressure.
That's NASCAR.
Pressure. It's NASCAR.
Well, this qualifying coming up for the Nationwide as well as for Sprint Cup later on, it's going to be intense, I can promise you. And it'll be nail biting all the way down to the last car.
Jeff, we just saw John Andretti in the 34 car at his Chevrolet. He is the slowest, but again, he's locked in with the top 35.
You know the thing about it, Steve, if you make this show, you're going to make about $85,000 to make the show if you finish dead last. If you're 2 1,000ths off and miss the show, we will see you in 2 weeks in Atlanta.
0.
Thank you for coming.
That is pressure. Carl Edwards in the 99 car on the pit lane. Practice is over.
I think he was wanting to make another run. Just did not quite get out. Yep, that's it. It's over with, boys. You've had 3 hours.
Yep, go to the house.
Wasn't even nice about it. Just pointing him back.
Yep,
Over,
yep.
done.
Go away. Cut it off.
That's it. Bob.
Greg Biffle very happy with his race car. Was good in race trim and qualifying trim. You look like you got a machine for qualifying today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with the car. It's a really fast and race trim. I'm excited for tomorrow night. 3 and 4 Fusion running good. It's 5th right now. I think we got, those are on scuff tires, so I think we get new tires on it. We might have a chance in the front row, but we'll have to wait and see.
Greg Biffle always good here at Bristol. 4 top 5 finishes for him in his career.
In Roush Fenway, they've got 10 Cup wins here. They've won 8 out of the last 15, and they have won the last 4 August races.
See a lot of Hendrick Motorsports cars up there in that top 5, Jeff Hammond.
Yes, you do. I'm just looking at Marcos Ambrose, and in fact, the Scott Speed and David Ruderman and David Gilliland are all up there also. I mean, they could really kind of upset a lot of these guys who need these positions that are vying for the point race. I mean, they could really give these guys and push them back in the pack. We've talked about how important it is starting up front.
Stay with us. NASCAR Live is next.
That's it, boys.
You're done.